Hi everyone, my name is Nathalie and I'm the Development Director for Burning Coal Theater Company. I'm here with our own Artistic Director, Jerome Davis, and we are here with another episode of Interviews from the Front, which goes over a lot of updates that theater companies have around the coronavirus. So, hi Jerry, welcome.
Hi. Sure, thanks for having me.
Great.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit first about the things that we've had to postpone or any losses that Burning Coal specifically has incurred?
Yeah, well, there is a number of things. We haven't had to cancel anything yet, and we may yet have to, but as of today, the 26th of March, we have had to push toward the end of June our fundraiser, the Cabaret Nights event, and that's going to be a really fun evening, if it happens, where a lot of your favorite artists from the Triangle will be here singing Broadway show tunes and other sort of songs, fun and upbeat, and some comical and some more sort of romantic or that sort of thing. But it'll be a fun evening, lots of good food and drink. But that we had to push forward, and then for the first time in 23 years, we've had to move one of our plays, the fourth and final play on our main stage season, Silent Sky by Lauren Gunderson. Was 1 week into rehearsal, and we still have 3.5 weeks to go, and so we decided to pull the plug on it. Momentarily we're going to push it into the fall, and if all things go as we hope they will, we'll be able to open that show in September, a month before we start the new season in October.
Sure. And those, I think Silent Sky is the kind of play that people can really look forward to as well. That funny, witty sort of play, and
Sure.
the Cabaret Nights.
Yeah,
There's
a lot of stuff
nice.
like that coming up. The one other thing I will say, Nathalie, is that we've also lost a number of rentals here in the space. People had weddings planned, people had other productions that not our own, but other companies that are not going to be able to happen, even if they wanted to. I think we're probably going to be in something like a lockdown mode pretty soon, and so those things are all having to be moved to new dates, and we haven't yet lost a lot of revenue from them, but it's going to be a very busy fall, and that means that dates that in the fall that we could have rented for other events are not going to be available on the calendar now, so it is lost revenue for us in that respect. And our education programming too, as you know well, you were going to lead a group of our young kids from one of the schools outside of Wake County. Was going to go with you up to New York for a really terrific 4-day trip to New York, where they were going to see Ivo van Hove's West Side Story.
So excited
To
about
Kill
that.
a Mockingbird, with Ed Harris. And then we were taking them to St. Anne's Warehouse to see The Jungle, which is one of the most highly critically acclaimed productions of the last couple of years. And so they were going to have an extraordinary experience with you there. And that appears to be entirely lost right now because many of the students would be graduating, and obviously we can't push that into the fall. And even if we did, those particular productions would probably not still be available to us. So there's a lot of things that have been lost, in-school residencies and things like that, but we're trying to hold on to as much as we can and keep fighting to keep them on the calendar.
Yeah, definitely. And fundraising, I think, is also something can be time sensitive. So just because something's being postponed doesn't necessarily mean everything's perfect.
There's a little idea of sort of momentum or critical mass that builds up toward a fundraiser, for instance, or a production of a play. And if you stop in the middle of it, we don't know what's going to happen. I don't think any of us do, really. Nothing like this has ever happened in my lifetime. I guess World War II was the closest to that for some countries, like in England, where they were being bombed by the Nazis, and still they didn't close down the theaters, though, remarkably. And so this is, even in some ways, it's not worse than that, but in some ways it's a more radical change in perspective than even that.
Sure. Do we want to pivot a little bit to some other upcoming projects?
Sure.
We've got a new season that's been unveiled. Hopefully, second stage is still happening. That's all
Yes.
really exciting.
Yeah, the second stage series will, if it happens, will happen in June, and we're hoping that will be the case. Right now we have 3 plays coming in. She Cow Productions, who did a play called Worried a couple of years ago, has a new play coming in, ironically and appropriately called Just Deal With It. And I don't think there's ever been a more appropriate title for this moment in time, so we're looking forward to that. And then we also have a new group that has migrated toward this area from the Northeast, from New York City, who will be producing a play called A Courting, which is a very physical and kind of site-specific piece. The audience will be on its feet a lot and moving around and seeing the building and the space from different perspectives. And so we're really looking forward to that. And then the third play on the season is one that we're co-producing with Anna Radulescu, who's a young director in this area. And that play is about Hugh Hefner and the Playboy Mansion and all that stuff.
Right.
And it's a very strange and very interesting and very funny and ultimately kind of poignant look at that world.
Yeah, interesting take. And that one I think is called Playdate. Right?
Playdate, that's correct, yeah. Thank you for saving me on that one. And then our season starts in the fall, and we're going to do 4 shows as we typically do. 100 Words for Snow is a one-person show. It's a very beautiful play, and it will open in October. Funny and sad and unexpected. Bring hankies if you come to see it. And then Evita, the great Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice musical in December. And then the third show on the season is 5th of July by Lanford Wilson, which is kind of a sequel to Tally's Folly, which we did this last year. And then we'll close the season with our own adaptation of Three Sisters by Anton Chekhov. So the season is looking really good next year, and it's going to have some company with some things that are being shifted toward the fall from this spring.
It'll be a really busy time.
It's going to be a very busy time. Our London tour is probably going to happen too in the fall. We've managed to push that forward too, and thankfully the airline and the hotels and the theaters are being accommodating in terms of allowing us to do that. So so it looks like all of that's going to happen as well.
Do you think you'll open that back up to more
Yes.
people if they're interested?
Yes, we will be doing that. We've split the tour from one large group to 2 smaller groups, and so we can add new people, and that is assuming the coronavirus allows us. We'll be going in August and then again in October.
Nice. And a little bit about educational programs that have not shut down yet.
Yep.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Our summer theater conservatories for middle school students takes place in June, and for high school students takes place in July. And both of those programs right now will carry on. You can register at burningcold.org or just give us a call at 919-834-4001. We'd love to have all those young people back in this building if we can get them there.
Yeah, definitely. Now let's pivot a little bit back to the pandemic itself.
Sure.
What do you think that this says about where we are as a nation right now, the pandemic?
Well, that's a really good question. I don't think it says much good, to be honest with you. The statistics are that more than half of the population in this country can't afford a $500 emergency, right? They would have to, radically shift something in their lives if such a thing were to happen. And of course, it's happening. It's happening right now. It's happening in the lives of tens of millions of Americans. And so you have to ask yourself the question, does a system that produces that kind of wealth inequality or disparity, does that sort of system deserve to be maintained? And I think that a wise person would question that. So I think the question is, how can we create a safety net for our citizens, which should be the purpose of government, right? So we have to turn to government and demand that they start restructuring things in such a way that the average person who works, and everybody I know, I mean, the people who work in the theater world don't tend to be, high up on the food chain economically, but they're all very hard workers. I don't know anybody who isn't a hard worker, who sits around doing nothing all day. They're working very hard, but they're barely able to pay the rent and, gas and, maybe an occasional week of vacation or something like that, but basically they're living paycheck to paycheck, and meanwhile the very few, the very elites in the country that have their hands wrapped around the levers of power are more and more consolidating their control of that wealth and that power, and so the government is the only mechanism to stop that, and it has to be done. It has to be now, and we all see it now.
It seems like it really is a convergence of a lot of different symptoms of our society. It's really been highlighted by this epidemic, right? All at the same time.
I think so. That's right. Yeah, sure. And we particularly see it in the arts. I've been doing these interviews for a while, and one of the things that I'm hearing from people, and I understand what they mean when they say it, I don't think that they're entirely wrong about it, but they're saying essentially we had nothing and therefore we had nothing to lose, right? And so we got out lucky, and that's not in any walk of life, in any business, certainly that kind of thinking would not be acceptable. Right, but in the arts it is acceptable, and so we've got to the point where we accept, the crumbs from the table of joy, to coin a phrase, instead of demanding our proper place of respect and support in the community. And so this pandemic is exposing the fragility of the arts community, and the degree to which we have a very thin edge of safety net. We really have no safety net, and you're going to see it. I think over the next few months, you're going to see arts organizations starting to close down or unable to carry on at the level that they had been working at before.
Sure. Are there things that can be done on a more local level to support arts organizations?
Sure. Well, yes. I mean, I think so. I think we have to decide whether we want art or not. Right? We have to make that determination.
I feel like if there's one thing that's happened, it's people have understood that they crave art through being locked away by themselves. So I'm hoping that people then take that as an opportunity.
I hope you're right, and I believe you're right. But I also think the average person in this country doesn't understand the arts, and there's no reason why they should. I don't understand brain surgery because I don't do it, and thank God I don't. But what I will say is that
thank God for all of us.
Right, we don't understand what goes on in the arts. Most people that come to see a play, they literally think that you walk out on stage and start talking. Right? They don't see the months and months and months of preparation that goes into getting to that point, right? And so they think, that there's very little time or money or energy necessary for the art. And so one of the things to go straight to your question of what the government can do, local governments, I think, is that they have to start providing infrastructure at a much greater level. We've lost in this state, almost a dozen theaters over the last 15 years or so. Some of the biggest theaters in the state, like the Charlotte Repertory Theater, the North Carolina Shakespeare Festival, and Man Bites Dog in Durham, and all of those facilities, not only were they great artistic performing arts organizations, but they all had buildings, and none of those buildings are still around. And so the cities, the towns of this community need to start looking around and seeing which of the arts organizations work and produce high quality art, and then how can we emulate that in such a way that we can have more of that, if that's what we want. And I certainly think it is. The theater is all too good at taking what it can get as opposed to demanding what it needs. And I think that this is a really good time for us to start demanding. Certainly none of the other industries are shying away from it. The airlines are not saying, well, whatever you guys can afford, they're saying we need X billion dollars in order to keep going. Do you want us or do you not, right? And the government is saying, as they should, we want you. Of course we want you. We've got to have you. But the arts community is not saying that. They're saying we'll take whatever we can get. And what we should be saying is we need buildings, we need funding, and we need the support of the government and the business community. And that's what I'm calling for. And I hope other artists will join me in that.
On a happier note.
Yes. I get very excited about that. I don't know about you, but yeah.
How do you think the theater community will bounce back? What's next?
Well, I think that we're going to bounce back. We are a resilient bunch, and our audience wants us and needs us. And I think when the doors open, I think you're going to see a flood of people coming in. And I look forward to that day and welcome that day. My fear is that it may not last. So I think now that we have a little bit of downtime for us to rethink a little bit about how we're operating and what we're doing, that we should, as my third grade teacher used to say, use your time wisely, and hopefully we'll be even stronger when the doors do reopen.
Mm. And is there any last thing that you'd like to say to the Burning Coal audiences and the larger community watching?
Well, I want to say that I appreciate everything that every one of you have done for us. There's an old saying in the theater, all you need is 2 boards and a passion. But the pandemic has exposed the fact that you also need an audience, right? And if you don't have that audience, there's no reason for us to be here. So it really is about you. It is about the people in the community. And we want to hear from you, and we want to serve you, and we're ready to do that. So thank you for your support over the years.
Great. Thank you, Jerry.
Sure.
All right. There are always more episodes coming out of Interviews from the Front. We'll see you soon. Thank you.